Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers is a weekly program designed to answer all your questions, including the ones you didn't even know you had, and to clarify the endless debates around the wonderful and fascinating world of sexuality. Join us for real talk about sex from two experts in the field. Richard and Larry Siegel have over 50 years of experience as sex therapists, educators, counselors, and researchers. The Siegel brothers are recognized around the world as trainers of medical and mental health professionals.
Hello, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And I'm Ricky Siegel, a certified sex therapist and supervisor.
And proud to say my brother.
My super awesome big brother.
Cheers.
To you.
Cheers to you, and cheers to you. Thank you for joining us. Mm-hmm. Our traditional sake toast. All right, welcome. This is our time, Friday nights, 7 o'clock, to have sex talk.
Right. Of course, every night should be sex talk, but this is our time, our weekly opportunity to talk about current events and invite guests in this weird and wonderful field of clinical sexology, the study of sexuality in human beings.
And to just get these conversations going. I don't know that there's anything more ironic than the way we deal with sex and sexuality in this country. We've railed about this many, many times in the past. The source of life, the source of our greatest pleasure, is often so shrouded in pain and shame and negativity for so many people.
And guilt and taboo and these messages that so many of us grow up with, that it's naughty and dirty and inappropriate and right? Like you said, the most universal thing that all of us share in common is the one thing we can't talk about.
That's right.
It's
Even
shameful.
when we're by ourselves and nobody is around, it's like we want to keep these secrets, these dirty little secrets, even from ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? And it really is crazy. So we appreciate you watching us and helping to carry these conversations forward.
Yes, please share and hit, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you've come to us through Facebook, we'd appreciate likes and shares and comments and get some discussion going.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear your questions, your feedback. And again, comments. There's certainly no shortage of things to talk about when it comes to sex.
Right.
And that's, but tell you, one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we have our guest tonight.
Yes.
Somebody who also loves talking about sex and somebody that we love talking to.
A renowned talker and writer, podcaster before it was cool. Author and advisor to magazines and columns, and author of this wonderful book, Getting Off, A Woman's Guide to Masturbation, among other titles, right?
Yeah, several
Jamye
books.
Waxman is also the author of Women Loving Women, Appreciating and Exploring the Beauty of Erotic Female Encounters, and participated in Hot Sex, over 200 Things You Can Try Tonight. Right? And credentials going way back, her experience belies her appearance because she looks about 35 and has about 60 years of experience. Right?
Yes, indeed. So really, really excited about sharing that conversation with you. That she definitely is somebody.
We're really happy to reconnect because if you've been watching the show, you know that May is National Masturbation Month, and we've dedicated a couple of episodes this month. But of course, being the last week of the month, we're just really excited to have this connection. And I'm glad that I was able to reach out and that Jamie was able to make it happen.
Indeed. And I can't think of a better way to cap off this month So I don't want to keep you all waiting any longer. Let's just go right to our interview with Jamye Waxman.
We are back and very excited to have an old friend, a reunion with Jamye Waxman. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Really, so great to see you.
So nice to see you both. I really love that we have this medium of Zoom to actually get to look at each other in the eyes while we do a podcast. It's kind of a nice difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been doing this a while. It kind of fell in our laps and been having a blast. Obviously, like we said before, it's a good shtick. Two middle-aged brothers talking about sex. It's certainly not very threatening. Little less safe than Dr. Ruth, but usually not so threatening. But
Right.
We've just been so excited to get to connect with people like we haven't seen you in so many years. We were so thrilled. Of course, I mentioned in your intro before we started chatting, you're like a superstar in the field, a writer, an author, podcasting since before it was hip, and making films and working with the late great
Candida Royale.
Candida, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Candida Royale.
Yeah.
I miss her
And
too.
when we first met back in around 2006 or 2007, we were all excited fanboys over this.
Getting off. Yes.
Off, right? This was the context in which we first met you. This is my autographed copy, A Woman's Guide to Masturbation. And as I said I emailed last minute, I was so hoping you'd be able to join us because it's our last week of National Masturbation Month. So we talked about it a couple of weeks this month, but we thought, how could we not try for the chance of getting to talk to you and how this book came to be, even though it's been around for a while. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do. Getting comfortable with the very subject.
Yes.
So, like I said, I was so excited that you could join us. I have no agenda. I have no questions prepared. I just wanted to rap with you.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have a question for the two of you that sort of came up, but it's not about masturbation. So I can pause it and say one thing, which kind of goes along with what you were saying about there's still so much work to do, is that it's really interesting, right? We were talking right before we went on the air about all the social media and all the variety of ways that people are providing sex education. And what really fascinates me, and I feel like one of my friends who's a sex educator who's a little younger, her name is Ashley Manta, she says, "You're OG." And took me a minute to understand what that meant, because like we've all been talking, the three of us and other people have been talking about these same things for years, but in every generation, actually almost every year, somebody else says the same thing in a different way. And still there are so many people who need to hear sex information and sex education. And it's really fascinating that, now that book came out in 2007, and there are, Come As You Are, a fantastic book on female pleasure and desire and drive. And it feels like in some ways inventing the wheel. And at the same time, this wheel has been just knocked at and chipped at over and over again.
Yes.
Right. So it's really like, I see these newer sort of sex educator pop rock stars out there saying these things as if they are saying them for the first time. It's fascinating.
I want to ask you about that now. Let me kind of put it back, because that's an interesting point. And for somebody who's also been around for a while, I want to get your take on that as well. That there are these new people coming in, and like you say, they're saying these same things as if they were brand new, as if they've never been said before.
Yeah.
Do you think we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot as a field in doing this by not acknowledging the history, what brought, especially young educators to this point? Are we missing something by not helping them see that these are not new messages, that these are rehashed old scripts?
I don't know. It's interesting that you say it, Larry, like that. I don't know if I feel like we're missing something. I feel as if what I've come into acceptance around is that for every generation, they need their generation to validate and recognize, and they need the people that represent them to be the people to share with them the information. And I think that there are a lot of sex educators who really do pay an homage or understand and respect where it comes from. It's the people that go out there and just go, well, I'm going to tell you about this. And it's like, I just thought of this great idea, and that don't do their research, that I trust a little less than the people who understand where the background is in the history. But I recognize, like, I try and think back to my 20 something days and think, like, even now in my 40s, would I have wanted to listen to me then? And who do I need to have that message delivered? I think what would be nice is if there was a way to sort of all come together, and there was more of an honoring and sort of an education between the sex education community. That I feel like is missing, and that people do take these reins as if they've invented something where it's like, let's collaborate. And that's always been a thing for me, that it's not about ownership, it's about collaboration. Nothing we're going to say about sex is new. It may be new to you, but it's not going to be new to everyone.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
So yeah,
There's
yeah.
a benefit to it being a relatively new field compared to most other academic disciplines. And a lot of the pioneers, although a lot of them are leaving us, like Betty Dodson, a lot of them are still around. And I think there could be more willingness to learn from some of the masters, because sadly, a lot of these Gen Zers don't know who Betty Dodson was and the contribution she made.
Right. And I think that's, if you're going to be a sex educator, knowing your history is important. And also, what you just said, Ricky, about the fact that we, 20 years ago, I really didn't understand what a new field it was. And that, in a few decades, there would be a difference in how, not much of a difference, but in how people talked about sex, or that there would be different mediums like TikTok or YouTube, where people would be able to put out their own sex information. I had no idea I was at the start of something, because I knew there were so many people who came before me, but I now recognize that the field is starting to blow up now, that all of us who were in it before, we were in it in those really early days. There's something actually really cool about that, I think. Like, I'm really glad I had that experience.
I mean, how does it feel if you think about the fact that over the next several years, they already have been, but over the next several years, there's going to be generations of sexual health professionals that are going to be cutting their teeth on your books.
Right.
Right? That's work that you've done.
Yeah, that feels like such an honor. If that happens, then I'm like all for it. And I think the piece, and I wonder if this comes up for the two of you at times too, is how to reinvent yourself as you age, and as you age into different like areas of life and sexuality. And I think that's where I have sort of started to reemerge. It was about, let's see, I've been a licensed sex therapist now for 2018, since 2018. I can't do math today, so I'm just going to say it'll be 3 years. And that transition for me really came after doing sex education for a long time, around media sex education, and wanting more depth and individual experience with people, and doing more one-on-one, because I felt like I was sort of doing therapy as an educator in many ways. And so I wanted that more intimate experience, and I wanted to be able to hold that space for people. So that was the next transformation for me. But I now am looking at, like, as a woman, about entering perimenopause and going into menopause, which is another sort of taboo topic for women, and trying to explore how to normalize that around sexuality and around just our bodies. And also the expectation, like, when men age, they become these like silver foxes. And when women age, they become old hags, right? Like, and this idea of like, what are our perceptions of how our bodies look and how they feel like. So I think what I recognized as I've started to, grow into the next generation of elders, even though I have some time there, I'm not jumping into that. But as I grow into that space, like I want to try and embrace that. I don't want to go back and pine for what I can't do anymore. I want to embrace what I can.
Right. And that's that common theme, I think, that we often put out there of that new normal, even before COVID, but that idea of, we allowing these changes, right? I do a lot with seniors. And there's a question that I often ask people who work with seniors, not the seniors themselves, though I do ask it of them as well, because the answers are the same. But I do like to ask people, are sexual problems a natural part of aging? And I would say overwhelmingly, people answer yes to that question. And then again, it becomes my opportunity to point out the distinction between changes that are normal, but problems are not. Right? But I think we get so, for lack of a better word, comfortable in a lot of these sort of what we accept as givens, right?
Yes.
Sort of these just rhetorical, almost couches that we sit on without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even along those lines, a lot of what I do work with when I work with couples, this notion of sex is natural, right? And what that looks like. And when sex isn't working in the ways that they want, what it means, because I love what Leonore Tiefer, I really love what she says about this around like reproduction is natural and sex takes work, right? Like the magazines and stuff teach you should, or tell you should just know. And here are the ways to achieve things. But the media's concept of what is sex and what works, and the reality of what people deal with when they are talking about sex or trying to have it, and then their own, right, like their own lives coming into play, or their own relationship dynamics, and having to really like sort of backtrack a bit about what actually sex looks like.
Yeah, I think there was a quote, wasn't quite agreement, but the consensus seems to have been that it was Bill Masters who said it. Came up at a STAR conference a couple of years ago that said that sex is perfectly natural, but not naturally perfect.
Oh, I like that.
I've been saying that since my very beginning.
Put that next to the media message about how every sexual encounter is supposed to be, Thanksgiving and 4th of July all rolled up into one. When sometimes you just want a cheese sandwich.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right.
Well,
That's
and
right.
and that and that goes into masturbation too, right? Like this concept of what masturbation is supposed to be and what it represents, and that when you're in a relationship with somebody else, that masturbation isn't something you should be doing for yourself. And I mean, I know that message, with Masturbation May is hopefully and on some level being removed, or at least my words are at a loss right now too. But I do feel like there is so much stigma around masturbation when the opportunity for partnered sex is available.
Right. You're not supposed to need that if you have a partner.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. There's a rank status, right?
Right.
The one we're supposed to be going for is intercourse with a partner. And then masturbation is often relegated to sort of the next best thing, or a default replacement or a standby. And yeah, it's just kind of bizarre. We've talked about that a number of times, even last week, pointing out how for most people, the more partnered sexual activity they're having, the more they do tend to masturbate.
Yes.
Enjoy both.
Right.
Better.
Yes.
Right.
So, what led up to that book? What sparked the idea, and how did it come to fruition? What made you write Getting Off?
I actually, on some level, it was handed to me, pun intended. But I was really close with a woman named Audacia Ray. I don't know if you remember her. She had a book called Naked on the Internet, and Seal Press, who published Getting Off, was actually looking for somebody to write a masturbation book. And I actually was really interested because of my own relationship with masturbation, which was that I actually started out being intimate starting with kissing and then sexually intimate with people in my teens. And masturbation didn't come into play for me until I was about 21. And it was actually my first orgasm was through masturbation. I didn't know I wasn't having orgasms before. And I then figured that out once I did have one, which I think is also something that comes up a lot for women in particular, right? How do I know if I'm having one? And it opened up, it changed my life. It changed my relationship to my own sexuality. It changed my relationship to pleasure. So for me, it became a personal mission to actually be able to empower other people, and in particular women, to feel good about their bodies. And then I got really lucky because I was in a circle in New York that, you know, was with Candida Royale and Veronica Vera, and who introduced me to Betty Dodson. And once she, I mean, I was already writing the book, but when she agreed to write the foreword to the book, I felt like I had landed in some ways, right? Like, here is this woman who just empowered, like, she took out that magic wand and made magic. And so for me, what going back to what we were just talking about, this like taboo around masturbation or this tier ranking around it, what I found so fascinating in some of the research was how the medicalization of masturbation really also knocked it down a rank, right? And that one of the first published books on masturbation, pamphlets in Europe in the 1700s, was called Onanism and the Heinous Sin of Self-Pollution and All Its Frightful Consequences for yada, yada, yada. And that was like, you know, put in all the coffee shops and social. So it was basically like, don't masturbate, don't touch yourself. If you do, here's a pill that can change, you know, that can stop you from aging and dying from this awful, dreaded disease. And so masturbation sort of came out of the closet as this like deadly way, this deadly disease, and instead of this way of self-pleasure, which, you know, actually could have made you feel better.
Yeah, we talked a couple of weeks ago about that insane history of doctors Graham and Kellogg and all of the spa / asylums. And
we also talk about
hysteria.
How it makes us scratch our head that that term onanism is associated with masturbation, homosexuality. I mean, what was the sin of Onan? He pulled out
From his brother's wife's, right? He didn't want his brother's wife's kids.
So he didn't impregnate her. He pulled out. How is that masturbation?
Right. How did that link ever happen? Well, it's interesting. I don't know why I was thinking about this just last night, but even like how the medical offices were the first places where a woman can go to, you know, get off to have like to relieve her hysteria. But then I was thinking that, you know, in terms of just with everything that's going on and recognizing race and privilege, that was a privileged white woman, right? That's which I really hadn't thought about before. This just popped into my head the other day. Like, wow, just even like relief of hysteria was a privileged example of like how you showed up in society or whatever it is. And how fascinating that what happened to those women that weren't that privileged when they had hysteria?
Probably locked up.
Well, I mean, even the whole neuroticism. Right. You know, even neurotic was a privileged diagnosis, because if you were white and wealthy, you were neurotic. You had a nervous breakdown. If you were exactly. If you were poor, and especially of color, no, you were just locked away. You were insane.
Yeah.
You know, we've often joked about that, especially, you know, my love for Salvador Dali, and I often use him as a perfect example of how your bank account really sort of determines that level of sanity. If you are
your diagnosis,
if you're wealthy, you're eccentric, but if you're poor, you're insane. Right? That was often that class split. So you're absolutely right, and I think even, you know, just the, I think even permission for masturbation and the framing, you know, around what we try to do. I think if we're going to be honest, there's some element of that that's a part of that as well. You know, that messaging and even just the whole idea.
Right. Well, as you say that, yeah, one of the things, like even the idea, like go take care of yourself. If you're like thinking about people who live in a one-room apartment with their whole family, just
Mm-hmm.
the idea of where do you find the time to do this without, right? Like, I mean, that's just something that popped into my head as you were just saying that, Larry. Like, there is so much to take into account, even in our sex positive messages. Because not for everybody, that doesn't work for everybody. There is
Mm-hmm.
the obstacles to sex positivity that show up in certain dynamics.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again,
Yeah.
masturbation is very much a part of that. So
Yeah.
it's, when people talking about how they're supposed to be sexual, how they want to be sexual, that seems to be a kind of a tough description for a lot of people, especially women. When you ask them, how do you like to touch yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why isn't that such an easy question for people to answer?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think first of all, the fact that genitalia for women are internal, right? And so you actually have to be comfortable looking at yourself in order to answer that question. And I think that the idea that you that message that sex will be what pleasures you, intercourse will be what pleasures you, like that is, even though the Freud piece sort of that's been a long time that's been around a long time and also, removed a long time. I love, like I said, about come as you are, the accelerator and brake, and not looking at it as a sex drive, sort of the dual response model. But I think that messaging is really inherent. And I mean, again, if for porn, which I know pretty much anyone under the age of 18 has access to porn as their first sexual experiences, so that they see that this is the way I'm supposed to have sex and I'm supposed to feel pleasure. And I think for women, there is some shame around what genitals look like as well. So I feel like all of that goes into play around why women don't necessarily know themselves as well. And also just the taboo of talking about it. The thing that was coming up for me around the two of you is my my husband and his brother will not, like, their sex lives are off the table. They cannot talk to each other about sex. They don't want to know anything about each other's sex lives. And I think it does start in families, like the openness to be able to talk about sex, not like overshare all the time. Of course, maybe it's different in this relationship, right? Which I think is a unique experience, but just that comfort. Like, and I think that's what, like, I was curious about for the two of you, like, how comfortable, like you clearly are very comfortable, but like how do you get that level of comfort with each other, and what are off like limits in and I know I've sort of switched the topic here, so
Interesting. The family was kind of split because mom was very conservative, not politically. She's always a very liberal person politically, but she grew up, kind of a goody two shoes from the Grand Concourse in the Bronx. Dad, wise ass Navy guy from Brooklyn, right? They were real opposites attract. But mom was always very politically involved when we were three boys. And even when we were babies, like in '65, I was 2 years old and she had three babies in tow. I was almost arrested participating in a counter protest to protect a gynecologist because the anti-abortion folks were carrying on and threatening, and there was a whole big to-do. So she was always very minded. And of course, being the only woman in a family of five, she raised two boys who can cook and clean and change poopy diapers and sew buttons and, take care of things. But dad and our older brother, well, mom was very excited. She retired as a physical therapist, and they followed us to Florida. And first thing she did was volunteer at the Planned Parenthood, where we both worked. I inherited his whole job.
Oh,
So
wow.
volunteering in the clinic, doing birth control options and pregnancy options counseling, HIV testing, and she'd get all excited. Oh, we got these new Japanese polyurethane condoms. And dad and our older brother would be like,
the kimono ones.
there they go again, and like leave the room, mortified.
Right. But at the same time, it's funny because there's really no sort of straight line with all of this. Because on the one hand, there really wasn't a whole lot that I would say was spoken.
No.
But the kind of modeling, I mean, everybody in our family lived in their underwear. Right?
Yeah.
Mom was
Okay.
always in her bra and panties. Dad was always in his underwear. So, you know, even as I would even say inhibited in a lot of ways as dad was, there was that kind of openness that
There
was
was the comfort.
still around. There
Yeah,
was a
there
body
certainly was.
comfort. I
Yeah.
think that really got put out there in that way. So it's you know,
So
I
that was some of the first messaging, it sounds like, consciously or unconsciously, that allowed you both to feel
mhm,
comfortable just in your bodies as well.
Yeah,
mhm.
well, part of me likes to think my entire career was a series of happy accidents, and screw Freud and his ideas about ending up in the area where we need the most work. But
Oh,
I'm just riding the accidents.
yeah. Well, then can I ask you about your older brother? Is like when the three of you are together, if you have a relationship where you do get together, is it like you don't talk about what the two of you do?
Oh, no, no,
No.
no. If that starts to come, I mean, you know, he'll like our stuff on Facebook. You know, he'll kind of, you know, connect in that way to it. But if we start talking about this, he'll just shut
We
down.
should have him on the show just to
That would, yes,
see.
that would be an excellent
That really
episode.
would be
Mhm,
interesting.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it just really, you know, it's kind of polar opposite.
Huh.
Indeed. And even academically, he's a psychologist, but not what we think of as a people. He's like in human factors and engineering and not the like, tell me about your childhood kind of psychology.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. In fact, we, you know, again, the advantages of the small family, frustrating as that may be, is that we all get to see each other. And before COVID, you know, we all miss our conferences, but we kind of lost touch with you when you went into academia. So
Yeah.
fill us in. What did,
Yeah. Well,
what is it
I
practice?
feel like I lost
What are you
touch with
doing now?
everyone. So now I have a private practice. I see
You're out in LA.
I'm
Yeah.
in Los Angeles. Yeah, so I'm California based. I moved to LA in 2009, just trying to get out of New York for a moment. I love New York. I felt like it was the longest relationship I ever had, and it was the hardest one. Like I could love it and I could hate it. And I I was living with a partner, and I just ended everything and thought I need to do something different for a little while. So I came out here thinking this would be for a little while. And I was actually in LA for 2 years before I decided I didn't like it. But I also, if I was going to move back to the East Coast, I really wanted to know I was never coming back to California. So I decided to move to San Francisco. And while I was in San Francisco, that was one of my first crossroads. I was offered a really, really prestigious job at one of the top sex toy companies. And it was back down in Southern California. And they asked me to come back and work for them and be their spokesperson and travel the world and sell their products. I had mixed feelings about the company and their ethics. Although my dear friend Corey Silverberg said, you know, there are good people who work at like Exxon, like you can do that.
Sure.
But I knew that I was not that Exxon is a bad place necessarily, but it was around probably the time of the oil spill. So I think that was also, you know, to date myself. But so I was really at that crossroads, and that's when I went, do I want to do this? Do I want to do sex education? And it can be really hard to be a sex educator, right? If you don't have a steady sort of career, like as a professor somewhere. Or do I want to go back to school and really get into that sort of intimate individual space with people? And so I decided to turn down the job, and I went back to Santa Clara University. And actually, I think this was probably the last time I ever spoke with Esther Perel, because she got so famous after this. But
Yeah.
she was the person I went to and said, where should I go to school on the West Coast? And she put me in touch with the Baders, and they said Santa Clara University.
Nice.
So I went to Santa Clara and I finished my marriage and family therapy degree there. And in that time, I got pregnant, which, you know, I knew how that could happen. I didn't think that was going to happen to me at that time. And so actually that was another crossroads in my life, because I knew that there was a chance I would become a single parent, and that was something I didn't grow up with. That's a whole other topic. And so I tried to make it work with my daughter's father for a moment, but I kind of knew in my heart of hearts, like if I chose this path, it would be that way. So I finished up school with a 1-year-old. I think she was she was 2 by the time I graduated. And at the same time, I also wrote a book that was called How to Break Up with Anyone, Letting Go of Friends, Family, and Everyone in Between. So I did that in my last year of school. And then I was living in Santa Cruz, which is a beautiful place if you don't have to live there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely people who love it there. I think for me, and especially like with my Jewish identity, like to recognize I didn't have my community there. And many other communities I didn't have there. I was definitely like the sort of sarcastic New Yorker that either you got or you didn't get. So as soon as I graduated, July 11th of 2016 was the date I left Santa Cruz and took my daughter and moved the 2 of us down to Los Angeles again. And so we've been here ever since. And I did, for my internships, I worked at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, and I worked at the Center for Healthy Sex, which has a focus on sex addiction. And I was really curious to sort of understand that world. It turns out I didn't actually work one-on-one with men who identified as sex addicts. I mostly saw sex therapy clients there. And then I was also in private practice with a woman named Kate Luray, who has a book coming out next year on polyamory. And so she saw a lot of people with in non-traditional relationships and open relationships. So I really put my finger, and I was raising a 3-year-old, and I put my hands in all those pots and got all the experience I could. And then, when I got licensed, I went in by myself to private practice, and I've been there ever since. And ironically, just to sort of wrap that up, like in 2017, early 2017, I had already resigned to being a single mother. And just like, that was the path. I thought like, well, maybe I'll have sex again. I'll find somebody that I could just like bring in and out. And a girlfriend of mine was really trying to encourage me to go to a 90s bar mitzvah party at the Silver Lake JCC here in LA. And I was really not that interested in going, but I also needed to get out of my house. And so I went along with her just to see what other people did to socialize, because with a 3-year-old, you're not going to have much of a life. And I met my husband that night, and that was just completely random. I wasn't expecting it. And I laid it all on the line that I'm an intern doing my therapy license, and I just moved down here, and I'm a single mom, and he stuck around. So so it looks like I'm kind of stuck in LA. That was a long-winded answer for your question, but that's where I've been.
That's a great journey. Yeah.
Thank you. And now I have a 7-year-old. Yes.
Yeah.
And motherhood is its own other journey. But what I'm actually really proud of with her is very early on, I got her Corey Silverberg's What Makes a Baby.
Right.
And so she knew about eggs and sperm. And I actually heard her telling somebody the other day, well, you need the sperm from a penis to make a baby. Like, I'm a little nervous. She's educating a lot of her friends in first grade. So I'm like, I have to navigate that. But yeah, that's where I am right now. So it's motherhood, it's private practice. It's figuring out how I miss the media. So it's figuring out how to get back into the media. I would love to do some teaching at some point. Oh, and I'm also actually finishing up my PhD at Widener. And
That's
ironically, I've been doing that forever, but ironically, because of the working in the sex addiction world for a moment, I'm doing my PhD on trying to understand what men, and I'm keeping it very limited because that's where more of the research is, what men who identify with problematic sexual behavior prefer to be labeled, just to try and understand, like, we have so many labels. Is there one that more people are using?
Well, we'll have to have you back to talk about that.
Yes.
Yes.
Also,
That's another hot topic
right.
for us.
And also a really good topic as well. Would love to have you back to talk about raising sexually healthy kids.
I would love that.
A big sort of underlying theme that we've
Yes.
had, and I can now not imagine a better perspective.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so excited that we can have our little reunion tonight.
Me too. I know it was only a little bit about masturbation, but I just wanted an excuse to see your faces.
That's
Same
why
here.
that's why I emailed, and I'm so glad we could make it work.
Yes, and I look forward to seeing you in person at some point in the next year
Yes,
or
thank
two.
you.
Sure. And
Yeah.
we'll have you back on the show in a couple months.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What a
And
pleasure.
Yeah.
I've filled your contact information as the credits roll, but again, sex therapist extraordinaire from Los Angeles, Jamye Waxman.
Thank you.
One more toast, Jamie.
Toast to Jamie. Thank you so much. So wonderful to reconnect and see you and talk to you.
Indeed, that was really, really delightful. I don't think we need to belabor the point. It's there's still we've still got another week of National Masturbation Month. This is a really good chance. Again, I hope you enjoyed the interview, and use this time. You got one more week to celebrate National Masturbation Month. All right. I really like to see after May, walk around in June to see how many people have one forearm bigger than the other.
Popeye forearms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been celebrating.
Indeed. You've been doing a good job. So on that note, I think we will sort of call it a night. I want to thank you again for joining us this and every other Friday night that we are on. We really appreciate. And again, just as a reminder, please hit that subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you'll know when we have new people coming on, and certainly over on Facebook, hit that like and share, and again, help us keep getting the word out and continue to have these good conversations around sex and sexuality. So with that, we thank you. Have a wonderful evening, have a great week, and stay safe.
Thanks for watching Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us each week on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of the latest developments in the ever-changing world of sex and sexuality.